Du skal bli pappa om en uke. Er det nummer 1?
Det nummer 2. Ja.
Nummer 2. Oi.
Så vi litt sånn klare nå. Det kan komme når som helst, denne babyen.
Har du pakket sekken?
Ja, det har vi.
Nei, men for deg?
For både meg og for kona mi.
Helt riktig, fordi når jeg treffer menn som skal ut i dette her, så sier jeg alltid, ok, det som kommer til å kreves av deg, du aner ikke, det kan være fullstendig krise at du får ikke lov, du må være der ved siden og hjelpe til, og alle sammen skal presse som et lag og alt mulig. Og du må ha en sånn cirka 6 stykker sånn sjokolade og proteinbars, du må ha drikke, du må ha Red Bull, du må ha alt, du må ha en bok, du må ha blader, du må ha alt i en sekk. Det heter sekk for pappaen. Det anbefaler jeg alle.
Ja, jeg skjønner. Jeg har jo vært igjennom det en gang før da. Jeg har jo det. Så da hadde vi styrtfødsel. Så det gikk på 3,5 timer fra første til barnet var ute. Så
det jo flaks at vi får det til nå da.
Jeg tror egentlig det, for at vi har fått høre fra ABC-klinikken som vi skal til, at det kan ta under 2 timer denne gangen. Så det litt sånn, vi sitter litt sånn parat.
Så fordi som da etter hvert kommer mange på å høre på nå, du brått må bare legge på, så det til grunnen. Det fødsel.
Ja. Da det på grunn av fødsel som på gang.
Det var så stilig med Margrethe, kone mi, på nummer 2. Så var vi på Ullevål, og så tenkte jeg, vet du hva? Jeg rekker å dra hjem og se på Liverpool spille mot West Brom. Så jeg kjørte hjem, og så på kampen, og husker kampen, og så ringer Margrethe sånn, ja, du bør komme nå. Ja, det kult, fordi kampen akkurat ferdig. Og så kjører jeg tilbake til Ullevål, og en halv time senere, og der var alle fornøyd, for Liverpool vant! Det var 3-1.
That was the best part.
Og da tenkte jeg, for en kveld, det var en magisk kveld. Så men det fascinerende, det så mange kule historier når folk snakker med. Her kommer Geir også.
Her kommer Geir. Han snart på lyd, så vi får vente til han skal opp.
Geir ut i universet.
Geir ut i universet. Bare vent litt, jeg skal prøve å få mine Bluetooth-greier til å funke.
Brendan, det bakgrunnen fra Seinfeld du har det?
Yes.
Ja, det det.
Yes, det veldig, det respekt at du ser det. Ja, da får du poeng. Det fortsatt verdens beste serie, og jeg og Margrethe, vi ser fortsatt sånn, skal vi se en Seinfeld-episode? Og det sånn, ja, la oss gjøre det, så vi gidder ikke å lete etter særlig mye nytt, men vi digger den og bare sitter ned og fortsatt ser på Seinfeld.
Det deilig å ha sånne deilige innsjekkspunkter, Så
har vi Ingrid her, og Brian har vi hatt på før, men hvem Ingrid? Kjenner vi Ingrid?
Hei, nei, dere kjenner ikke meg, jeg har ikke vært der ennå.
Kult at du med.
Jeg på vei til å pakke og masse sånn som det, så jeg bare hører veldig gjerne mens jeg styrer masse annet, så jeg kjøper mute.
Ja, det går bra. Skal vi ta dette på engelsk eller norsk, eller hvordan vi?
Jeg tenker at denne gangen tar vi det på engelsk, fordi det var så mange som ga tilbakemelding sist på at vi har lyst til å høre av den følgerskalaen vi har på engelsk, hvis det greit. Aksel har vel fått beskjed om at dette skal gå på engelsk.
We can do it in English, that's right. Yep.
And here we have Brian.
He will probably prefer that we do it in English.
Well, I'm quite Norwegian, so.
Okay.
It's very Norwegian.
All right.
He's very Norwegian. So first of all, I think we start because the clock is running. So first of all, welcome, Aksel. Thanks for joining. And we have some talks, but I have with me Brandon and Geir, and we do these webinars. It's been not weekly, but almost weekly, and sometimes more. For some days ago, we had Øystein Pettersen. That was really cool. So he had a lot of cool tips. And now, again, thank you for joining. I have been watching you because I have a lot of, I deal with a lot of children. So I have heard, and I heard some of your webinars, and you're really sharing some cool and free tips. And that's what these guys also do, Brendan and Martin. Maybe you can take over, Brendan, and then I will mute some I hear who's coming in.
So I think the rule is here to mute people where there's lots of things happening in the background. Aksel, it's a real pleasure. Have you got like a 1 minute intro of yourself or something like?
Yeah, sure.
Like this is Aksel's field of expertise or tips or?
Yeah, I'm a psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm specialized in something called emotion-focused therapy, which is basically therapy focused on emotions, and you could say like, isn't all therapy focused on emotion in a way? But this is emotion focused therapy is special in terms that we tend to view mental health problems and mental pain as emotional needs that aren't met, or perhaps like even old emotional needs that aren't met. So I work a lot with clients to actually go into pain in order to change it. Like, so changing emotion with emotion is like the big change mechanism in emotion focused therapy, or EFT as we call it. And I'm also specialized in something called EFST, which is emotion focused skills training, which is headed at parents and helping them with coping and handling and helping their children with their emotions again. And besides that, I work a lot with clients. That's my main job, working with clients and parents. And I mostly have adult clients. And I write a lot. So I've written a book called Klok på følelser. What would you call it in Norwegian? No, in English.
Wise about emotions, maybe?
Wise about emotions, something like that. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Klok on følelser.
Klok on følelser. And written a lot of articles, mainly about making psychological information accessible to lay people. That's basically my goal. Yeah.
One of the
I do have a question right off the bat. How do you define emotion?
How I would define emotion? Well, actually, in terms of that, we actually have to define affect and feeling first. But if you want, like the
go on.
Yeah, affects are the biological programs we are born into this world with. Affects, affect is probably the right pronunciation, which is like you have a lot of different affects, like joy, excitement, distress. You have fear, which is basically just too much of something too fast. You have anger, and you have joy, and you have interest, engagement, and shame, humiliation, etc. And all of these are just like biological programs, which we can see even in newborns. And after a while, you get a subjective experience of these effects as well. When you have a consciousness, like when you notice that, I'm feeling something in my body, and this must mean that I'm scared of that dog over there. That's what we call a feeling. That's a subjective experience of an affect, in a way. Okay. But then you also have emotions. And emotions are something different. Emotions are your bibliography in sort of all your experiences with your affects and feelings throughout your life. It's basically what it means to you to feel, in a way. So every time you get an affect, that can of course become a feeling as soon as you become consciously aware of it and put some meaning to it. Then it becomes a feeling, in a way, a subjective experience of something. But then you also have your emotions, which is all your experiences with those feelings from before. So it's different for Geir to be scared than it's for Brendan than it's for Katrina. That's basically your emotions. So it's your whole history, in a way, for how it is for exactly you to feel exactly how you feel.
So it's almost like when you talk about computer science, you talk about data, information, knowledge, wisdom, right?
Exactly.
So data is the basic thing, which is just numbers, and information is on context to that numbers, which would sort of here parallel to feeling, I guess, and data would be effects. And then you have the knowledge wisdom area, which is then emotion in this context. I'm just trying to parallel it to something that we do have a lot of. We do seminars and courses on these things.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I've heard also the analogy of affects being hardware, and and feelings then being software, I guess. What would it? I'm not sure how. I don't remember the analogy. Something like that. Something like that.
No, I can help you with that because we could perhaps translate it to affects being hardware and feelings being software and emotion being the guy at the computer.
Exactly. Yeah, you could.
Yeah, because he's sort of in control of this, or maybe sometimes in control of it, and sometimes not when he gets angry when the game kills him or whatever. But there is an emotional aspect of being in front of a computer, at least when you're doing gaming.
And there is a history,
there is a history, and all the other games are lost and everything. So
absolutely.
Now that's actually quite interesting, and I think it's important for the viewers to get this sort of foundation before we dive into how to change those emotions, because then we have the definitions clear.
And then you also could say that affects it varies in length, because affect is often like it could be milliseconds, or even just a few seconds. But feelings tend to be a little bit longer. They tend to be like it's a matter of seconds, at least, or up to minutes. But emotions can go on for hours, days, months, years, even. So whenever you're in a bad mood over a long period of time, that would be considered an emotion. Then something is going on for you, which is specific to you. It's not just like fresh affect from that moment. It's something more.
So to get into a sort of an example of this, if I see a bear, not beer, a bear.
Well, if I have joy, excitement, I would guess joy, excitement, and then.
You meant a bear.
I understood.
Since I have a gluten allergy, I would have the same effect actually. But if I see a wolf, no, not a wolf. They are cute. No, give me something bad.
A bear.
No, a bear. Okay, fine. And then my body sort of reacts to that, and then starts sweating, and the adrenaline and everything, and that sort of bang. It sort of
affects.
That's an effect, right? And then I have this feeling of fear going through my body, which is sort of overwhelming the systems really. And then I run away and up into a tree, and then I have these emotions going, oh my God, what am I doing now? And there is a mixed match of all kinds of stuff happening, which is then based on my history of being in dangerous situations, or maybe not. So.
Well, like the feeling is quite fast. Like the feeling appears the moment when you think like, oh, I am scared because I see this bear.
And then you run.
Feeling. Then you run and you act upon it. But if you have a lot of, let's say that you have a lot of experiences of being unable to soothe or unable to calm down when you're scared, then that feeling of fear will probably last for a long time. Because you're having trouble with calming down, basically, because you don't have experiences with it. That would be an emotion of fear, lasting for a long time. But let's say that you have a lot of experiences in your history of being able to calm down or mastering fear, then that feeling won't last for that long. Probably you will calm down and you'll, all right, and now I'm safe. And I will go over there instead, It's that's the different aspects of it. Like some people, we go through life with different experiences in regards of what we can expect with our emotions, and how we can expect that other treat our emotions, and how other reacts to us, and what we can expect. Like, will I be able to calm down? Will this get better? Will it get worse? Will anybody help me or not? And that, of course, affects how we experience emotions.
Cool.
So I'm reading a book with my youngest kid at the moment. It's Lily, and she's 9 years old. And it's written by Jocko Willink. He's this crazy ex-SEAL. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast quite a few times. And it's about this little guy in the book called Mark, and it's called Mark's Mission. And Mark has this trouble with just hitting people. He just somebody calls him something and he just hit them. And then his uncle comes in, and his uncle tries to help Mark. And his uncle says, so whenever something happens, there's these flares. So, the flares, like you shoot up in a boat and it's like, phew. And you have to try to realize when the flares start shooting up. Because when the flares start shooting up, that's when you have to decide what you're going to do. So he's trying to discuss and tell the story about the flares. How can we recognize the flares? So they say, okay, so can you notice your face getting more red? Can you notice your heart starting to pump? Can you notice something in your stomach? Can you notice something? And then you get over, they move on to this, to controlling your emotions. It's a really beautiful book. I think there's 3 books in the series. And Lily thinks it's great. She's like, oh my God, what's he going to do? What's he going to do?
Cool.
And yeah, it's a really nice story.
It's basically about, in some cases, like increasing your emotional competence in a way, like recognizing when am I feeling what's happening and like understanding what's going on in order to be able to act upon it or not. Is that right? Or
yeah, exactly. But because I think there's a lot in that we see in the media, like this typical question we get in the media to people is like, so what are you feeling now? It's like the typical sports question, what are you feeling now? But they never tell what they're feeling, you know. They're always like, yes, it was a really tough race. I said, no, but what are you feeling? Yes, it was a tough race and we went really fast and it was hard today. It was a hard match. And what are you feeling? And they never get to this level of emotions or feelings. It's like there's very few people discuss that.
I have a rule with when I talk with people about feelings, that when they say I feel that, then it's usually not a feeling that ends up being described. Like I feel that he is being an asshole. That is not a feeling, you know. It's an interpretation. So, but when they say I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel scared, I feel ashamed, I feel humiliated. That's more in terms of a feeling.
What about the sentence? There's two sentences that I'd like you to sort of like give some thoughts on, and that is, I feel that you're making me angry. That's number one. And number two is, I feel that you're making me create anger.
Well, it's the scientific term of what you're describing would be a lack of agency in your emotions. That's what we call it in a way. Like in order for emotions to be helpful in a way, we need to have a sense of agency, and that means that I own my own emotions in a way. So you make me angry. That is low agency, you know. But I would actually like instead of the others, like instead of, because the term saying, I don't remember the second sentence, was like something I get when I feel that you make me create anger. Was that it?
Yeah. This is the typical, this is what we talk about with kids and teenagers, you know, it's like, and the silliest example is just watching a typical person driving a car. It's like, is that other person in the car really making me angry now? Is it them that's making me angry? Right, we're driving around in the car and our senses are like way up here. And it's like, who's actually creating the anger here? And it's such a fascinating discussion to get into.
Yeah, I was just like the term of creating an anger, which is like which is a little bit different than owning emotions in a way, because like, I guess like affects happens in so few milliseconds that it's hard to like see that we're creating it in a way. So I would like in couples therapy, we recommend people saying, I get angry when you say that because I need something, like something happens in me. But we don't say like I created, but it's a sense of taste, I guess. Yeah.
I have a question on that, because it is possible to create anger.
It is possible to create it, of course. Instrumental anger. Yeah.
You know, I can just become angry on will, or become afraid on will. Really,
that would be called an instrumental feeling, which is a little bit different than a feeling triggered by something in a way.
I understand, but it's just possible to create it. Because I had this situation where a girlfriend I had was studying to be a nurse, and she read in a book that you have autonomous muscles in the body and you cannot control them, like the heart. And I said, okay, that's bullshit. Listen. And I put her head to my chest and I just almost doubled the heart rhythm in about maybe 3 or 4 seconds, right? You can easily do that. And it's very easy for anybody to check it. You can just think of something you're afraid of and the heart rhythm goes up. It's easy. You just create the fear. And she went to her teacher and said, well, I just experienced that. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, that's not possible. And so it's interesting. You can create the emotions, but as you say, that's instrumental emotion. But it's instrumental
when you like start like engaging it to create the trigger yourself. But you're still picking up on something. Like if you're, for example, thinking of something you're scared of, you're still thinking of something that is a trigger to making you afraid. So I'm not like, but it's a bit of the wording here that I'm a little bit I don't.
Yeah, because I
Totally
try to make that.
wording,
I
yeah.
try to go further on that, and then
Yeah.
try to create fear without thinking of something.
Yeah.
Just purely create the fear, and that
Yeah.
is also possible actually. So, or anger, just purely just be anger without any connotation to any other past. It's interesting to try to do that, because through that I got an interesting control over the fear when I go on stage, etc. Because I used to be
Yeah.
scared shitless to go on stage, and
Mm.
now nothing is happening when I go on stage. There is no emotion. There is just on stage, period. So that's how I conquered that fear, at least.
Cool.
This is so
Yeah.
cool to have an expert to discuss these things. I think
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
freaking
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Because
It's not often we get that. So it's
no, because this is stuff like we talk a lot about this as if we know about it, right? And as if we've studied it. But a lot of basically what especially what I've got is just through talking with other people, just like what's going on here? What's going on? And one of the tips that I actually got from a guy that I've helped with my oldest daughter is any gymnastics tournament that she was going to compete in, she'd always get nervous, right? So if she was about 9 years old, she would be sitting in the car, Papa, I'm really nervous now, I'm getting really nervous. And I'd say, okay, cool, so let's do the exercise. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big would this nervousness be? I'd say, Papa, it's about 6. I said, okay, let's go 7. Let's go 8. Let's try. And she's sitting in the passenger seat, and and it's like, okay, but try to create a 9 out of 10. And she'd go, okay, hang on, Papa, hang on. And she'd be doing her best to create, Papa, I'm really, really nervous now. I'm so nervous. I say, cool. And then the next step is, okay, bring her back down again to 5. And through this, she actually said to me, Papa, I think I'm starting to be able to turn it up and down now. I said, wow, that's probably a cool trick that you can use sometimes. Yeah, maybe I can do that before the tournaments. And this is an exercise that for her, is, like, even if it's real or not for her, this is an exercise she believes in, that she thinks that helps her a lot.
And that's the main point. The last thing there, that's the important thing in a way. Like if I was to view it in affect theory, because there are basically three needs in fear. You need to feel safe in a way. That's a need. If you feel safer and you feel that somebody is there to create it safety for you, and you need to feel protected, and you are probably there as a safety and protection in that moment because you are not scared. You say, okay, let's try go 7. That's protection. That's safety. That's you holding her hand. Let's go in and look at this thing. And even that is calming. Then it's much easier to go into something scary. And also it's the last need in fear, which is mastery. Like, I need to be able to cope with this fear and master it, and be able to feel like I can still, I could still go on further even though I'm scared. It's possible to overcome this in a way, and that's what you're helping her with. So you're basically like attending to the 3 foundational emotional needs of fear in that trick right there. But it's not, I would say that it's an emotional help in a way, but it's communicated through words and an exercise. But you're there with her, you're saying, this isn't dangerous, we're going to explore it together. And I'm here by your side, I'm kind of holding your hand, and we're going into it, and see, you can do this. And that's emotional support. Yeah, and that will calm down the fear. Yeah, that
okay. Now, my turn. I want to do something. Aksel, I want to get your input into something, because I'll try to make this story as short as possible. When my second oldest son, who is now 17, he was 12 years old, and he was bullied at school. And he came home crying, and he said, Daddy, people are bullying me at school. And I asked, okay, so what's happening? Well, they're saying this and this and this. And what happens then? Well, I get sad. Okay. And he's very much into mathematics and physics, and he's a very hardcore realist guy, right? So I said, so what happens? I mean, let's just do this step by step. There is sound waves coming from that mouth, from that other guy, right? Yeah, okay. And those sound waves are going through the air, and they're hitting you. And for some strange reason, those sound waves transforms into sad. Can you explain how that happens? And he went like, not really. So is he making you sad? No. So who is making what here? Well, I'm actually the one who is creating the sadness. He came to that conclusion himself. And then I said, okay, so you're giving away your key to your emotion so that you don't own that emotion anymore. You don't have that key. He has the key. So every time he just turns around and you become sad. Yeah. So what do you think I should do, Dad? Well, what about taking back the key? And he went like, how do I do that? And then we talked about it, and he said, well, you know what I could do? I can just give a fuck, not do anything about it. Well, let's try and see how that happens. What happens. And then he went to school the other day, and we went to this store every day and talked about these emotions and what happened, and if we were able to just not give a fuck about it. And he just exercised it. Every time somebody said something, he would just, not do anything. And after 14 days, he came to me and said, "They stopped bullying me." Why do you think that? Well, I don't react anymore. Nothing happens. And then they stopped. And after that, there was no bullying, not ever. And he was fine. Give me some input on this one, because this is a story I tell a lot, but in the longer term.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great that they're not bullying him anymore. So it seems like something worked out. And I recognize the pattern of like, well, you actually see that a lot with bullying, that the more, this is like terrible findings in research in a way, but the more the bully victim in a way reacts, the more he often tends to be bullied. And that's actually it's quite sad in a way. So that's what happened with a lot of bully victims, that they kind of like, well, they stop showing it. And that's actually quite an adaptive response, even though it's not good, because it reduces the bullying. But let's head back to your story.
Yeah, because he wasn't just suppressing it, not at all.
I wasn't suggesting that.
Yeah,
I wasn't suggesting that. I was just talking about like in general that's an effective strategy in a way. But so I hear that we have some kind of like ground differences in how we view emotions in a way, because like the feeling of sadness usually appears when there's like when you've lost, well, pure sadness, grief is usually when you've lost something. So this would actually be a kind of sadness mixed with shame, this kind of emotion that's going on. And well, the need in sadness is care, comfort, closeness in a way. And when you get that linger, that soothes the sadness. So I would like say it differently. I wouldn't have like look like it's sound waves and then you make the sad. I would say like, well, of course you're sad because it feels hard to be bullied. I would go that way instead. That's called a validation of emotion. And that's one of the most powerful things we can do in order to help them with like actually, because the emotion of feeling sad when you're being bullied is actually quite helpful in a way. It tells the child that this is not something I want. I don't want this. So I would actually encourage the child to actually listen to it, but I would also help them to get through it in a way. So I hear that it's like, and what you did with like the questions would actually, like in terms of emotion focused coping and helping, it would actually be termed as an invalidation in a way of the emotions. Like you don't have to feel this, you can turn it off in a way. And as long as it's giving with enough care and support and safety, that would be fine. But at the same time, it can also go the other way, because I've had so many clients coming up to me over the years with emotions that experienced hard things, and they were told to think differently or to stop having those emotions or to like deal with the emotions alone, but they didn't feel support, and the emotions just became worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Like
now I have something on that. It's interesting because this is tailored completely to the fact that Jonathan is a hardcore physics guy, right? And therefore the only way I could get through to him was to talk sound waves. I wouldn't do that to any other kid, but that's tailored to him. But then again, it's not about stop feeling that. It's not about just suppress that. It's none of those. It is own it to the point where you can turn it off and on. Own it to the point where you can say, it's my emotion completely. which is similar to what I did, pissing myself going on stage, or not feeling anything going on any stage really, because it's now completely under my control. So it's dangerous to invalidate it in the form of don't feel it, or suppress it, or disregard it,
or even positive invalidation, like, oh, it'll go and be all right, it's going to stop, or you'll get better, or even that would actually be quite harmful, because it kind of messes up with the emotional compass of the person.
I understand all of that.
Yeah.
It's none of those though. It is try to control it in a way that suits you. Try to turn it, as Brendan said, turn it up, turn it down, see if you can monitor it.
I have a question there, Aksel, because what's your best tips then to do with dealing with bullies? Because recognizing the feelings that the one who has been bullying has is one thing, but he also has to cope with it when he comes to school the next day. Or I can come home and be like, I understand this is hurting, and be like supporting with my child, but he has to face the bully and deal with that kind of sadness or that kind of emotion when he gets to school the next day. That's why I find what Geir also is saying interesting, because then he still gets the support, but what is the best way to help them when they're facing the bully?
Well, it's basically what you just said. It's both validating and helping them with dealing with the tough emotions in a way, and also supporting them in helping in mastering it, in coping with it. And that might be different from child to child. Sometimes it's like talking through, okay, what can you do? What can you say? What can you respond? Or who can protect you in a way? Or can I protect you? Or is there a teacher? Or is there something we have to deal with here? Or so it's different from story to story, obviously. But it's basically like the simple, recipe would be validate the emotions in order to help them actually dealing with it, and understanding what it feels and listening to it, but while still being able to regulate it in a healthy way. And then also supporting them and helping them to find some kind of solutions. Of course, you need some practical solutions as well. You can't just say, okay, here we have validated your feelings, now go out there to the Shark Tank and have fun.
But what is your best tips for the parents then? Because do you feel like the parents are doing what you're talking about now, or are they getting defensive and I'm not going to school, I'm going to talk to the teacher, I'm going to call these parents and really yell at them? And
I usually see two different approaches. Well, when things are not working, I usually say two different approaches. And the one approach is not dealing with the emotions, or not taking care of it in a way, basically invalidating it. This is going to be all right, and they're probably not meaning it today. They're probably having a tough time themselves. It will get better. We will show them in time who's best. Those kind of responses, which is basically actually just leaving the child alone with their emotions, if you understand what I mean. It's basically I'm not helping you with this. That's the message, and that's what most of my clients come to me with when they're adults. And they say things like, I know they were trying to help me, but it didn't help. I felt alone. I felt unprotected. I felt like nobody helped me with this at all. And they go around with this then old emotions from that period, like old shame, for example, what we call maladaptive shame. And the other approach would be, like you said, Katrine, but still without acknowledging the emotions, just are going into full attack mode, and then making a big fuss about it, going out and that can actually sometimes even make it worse, so not listening to actually the child, going into attack mode, and creating a bigger fuss about it, basically. And,
Aksel, have you seen Cobra Kai on Netflix?
No, I've just seen it on the top list, but I haven't seen it yet.
Strike first, strike hard, no mercy.
Right.
So I grew up in Ireland, and this was how to deal with emotions, how to deal with bullies. Okay, you got to stand up, you got to strike first, you got to strike hard, no mercy. And that was sort of the culture. It was it was pretty crazy. But do you think we've swung too much over to the other side now,
Like to
the snowflake side.
Snowflake side. All right.
Like there's definitely what I grew up in wasn't like cool. It was like
Yeah.
you got to deal with it yourself.
It was anti-snowflake.
Anti-snowflake. Well, I don't have any like statistics or research on that, like how long have we swing, but I still like most of my clients and most of the parents I work with still like a big trouble they have is not understanding the emotions well of their children. That's what we work a lot with, because they tend to invalidate a lot, and that makes the pain harder, and that actually like increases the pattern which Geir was talking about, like they still like well, the emotions get so hard that this is hard to explain in English.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I for those who are viewing this one, I have heard a lot of your like webinars, or what you call it when you talk online, and you're talking about like primary emotions and secondary emotions. And when you react with secondary emotions to primary emotions, exactly. Like the difference about that, and then it will spin off to a lot of you're not dealing with the emotion, you're like angry because of something you feel or something. Exactly. And then I don't know if that was helpful, but
well what to explain it to the listeners, primary emotions is like or primary feelings, you could call it that. That's your initial response to something going on. Like for example, you lose your mom and you become sad, and by definition we said like you have lost something you love and something you care about, and you don't have access to support, comfort, care. So that triggers sadness, the emotion sadness in a way. And that is called a primary feeling, because it's the first it's the first response to something going on. Also something like if somebody stepped over my boundaries, that could trigger the primary emotion of anger in a way. Or if somebody was standing in front of me and yelling at me with a gun, that would probably trigger the primary emotion fear, you know. So because I'm not safe. So, but when people don't understand their primary emotions, they don't listen to it, they don't get that they're feeling, or they have experiences with those emotions that they are not helpful, they are not allowed, they are being struck down on, or it's not safe to show these emotions. Like for example, in the schoolyard, if you're being bullied, it's not that safe to show that you're sad, because you will probably be bullied more, right? So when we don't express or don't acknowledge or aren't able to express our primary feelings, we can have secondary feelings instead. And secondary emotions are your emotional response to a primary feeling. Basically, it's what you feel about what you feel. So
I wonder if being joyful about being angry, like if you are feeling sort of aroused by being in a combat. I mean, some MMA fighters are feeling this. They feel the joy of being angry. Then they lose because they're angry, but that's a different matter. But yeah, that would be one, right?
That's actually not a secondary emotion, because it's actually more coupled to an initial sequence that whenever you are angry, and you are able, like the need in anger is setting boundaries or acting upon it, or like being able to feel pride or dominance, for example. And that actually, when you get that need met, then you feel joy. So joy is always,
so it's the next sequence. Yeah, it's the next sequence emotion. It's not emotion about the emotion. It's emotion that comes after the emotion.
Yeah, it's the same thing as feeling intense grief. If you ever felt intense grief and then afterwards, after crying, immediately feel happy.
Right.
Because you got in touch with something that was, Or
then I understand
or even better
what you
like
mean.
With the fear of you're terribly scared of something. Like say if I was terribly scared of giving a lecture, and then I've been going on there like, oh, this is scary. Oh, and then it goes really well, and people come to me like, oh, this is really cool. Then I feel happy because I'm safe again, and I also feel pride, you know. So it's a sequence in a way, but the secondary emotion is more like in the moment, an emotional response to a different emotion. So joy is very rarely a secondary emotion, but we tend to, the most common secondary emotions are anger and fear, but also sadness and shame. Shame is really common.
Yeah.
Like for
because
example,
I
when I get when I get afraid, when I get scared, I can feel quite shameful because I feel that it's weak to be feared, and I don't like myself when I'm scared.
Right.
Like so.
Okay. Then I understand it better. Then I understand it better, because you can also feel shame about your anger.
Exactly.
In the moment, and that's a secondary emotion. But then you get out of it, and then you feel you can sort of have a competence on it. Then you can feel joy about the fact that you have competence about it. But that's a sequence feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, okay, cool.
So there are two like big, like I've already heard that we've actually staked out the most common primary, secondary emotions patterns, which is it's always scary to talk about gender traits, but there is some themes that are recurring, that it's more common for men than women to have secondary emotions of anger in response to more vulnerable primary emotions. So it's quite common for men to be scared or ashamed or feeling guilt and or feeling sad and then reacting to it with anger. So and to be like to make it clear that it's still a true emotion. Like the person is feeling angry. It's not like the person is going around, oh, I'm really sad, I'm actually sad, but I show this anger. It's not like that. It's the person is feeling angry. It's a second is in the emotion in a way, but it's an emotional response to something else. And the opposite pattern is actually feeling angry and then feeling shame or sadness or guilt about it. That's a little bit more common with women actually than men. Yeah.
So
I've seen men as well getting angry and then like sort of like collapsing a little bit. I've seen that as well, but it's a little bit like, for example, crying when you're angry is a little bit more common for women than men. But it's not like it's bigger differences within the genders than between it.
I just want to point out that I think there's for a lot of viewers watching this, that maybe they should have this also in consideration when they're dealing with their children.
Definitely.
So,
because a lot of the emotions you see in everyday life, both in you and in yourself, will be secondary emotions.
Yeah.
It's common. It's not pathological in a way. It's something we all have, and it's a protection in it. It's a protection with it. If you're feeling really sad and you're feeling really bad about it and you want it away, it's in one way it helps feeling angry because you get more energy in a way, but it's also not helpful perhaps in the long run because it's sending messages to other around which are way different than your actual needs, because your needs are coupled with your primary emotions. So say that you're sad about losing your mom and you're lacking comfort, care, some kind of understanding in order to deal with your loss, but you're going around angry. You're actually creating distance instead, right? Somebody said like, hey, I was wondering how are you doing? I heard about the news of your mom, and you say, I don't want to talk about it, right? So it creates distance in a way. And also the other way around, if you're angry, you need to put healthy boundaries. You need to be the self-assertive anger, right? This is not rage, this is not aggressiveness, it's self-assertive anger, healthy. It doesn't even need to come out as anger. It can be just like, I won't accept what you're doing to me right now. It can just be like that.
Do you have but do you have to clarify that a lot with parents?
Yeah.
Like because I think like my son who's 10, sometimes he gets angry after a football game, but he's sad because he didn't score, right?
Yeah. So we have to be like a little bit like emotion, what would you call it? Detectives. What's really going on here? And a couple of questions which can be useful is like, does this emotion make sense in order, like in terms of what happened and what happened with the individual? And this is actually a much more trickier question than it seems, because the question is actually, does it make sense for this particular individual to feel that way in this moment, right? Because if my daughter, for example, gets angry at me. This has actually happened this fall. She got angry at me and had because I wouldn't let her sit on the roof of the car when we were driving to Drammen.
Wow.
I was like, yeah. And it sounds silly, right? In a way. She also got angry once because I wouldn't let Alva drive the car, and Alva is the dog of my mother-in-law. So yeah. So this is how children work, right? But in a way, if I actually look into the child's view, it actually makes sense that she gets angry because she wants something and I'm standing in the way and I'm blocking it. And that's one of the main triggers for anger. When somebody is being a hindrance, standing in your way. And that's actually what's like in evolutionary terms. That's what is supposed to trigger your anger, because you want to overcome an obstacle and assert yourself in a way. So
and you need the adrenaline. You need the adrenaline
exactly,
to get
because
through
it makes
that
you
obstacle.
stronger. You see this, and Brendan talked about being a Liverpool fan. So you see football players do this all the time. They want to build up their own anger and aggression to get adrenaline. When they want to score and they have to score in the end of the match, they go like this. They pump up the energy from the crowd. Like, come on, give us more energy. I want to be angry. Or if you go back to probably a traumatic memory for you, Brendan, with the Champions League final where you lost a couple of years ago with the keeper was Karius, was it?
Yeah, we were there. That was in Kyiv.
We were there. Yeah, we were there in Kyiv actually.
And he scored. No, he did a tremendous mistake in the beginning, right? Did you see his face afterwards? Did you see what it did? It did like this.
Yeah.
That's the action tendency of shame, basically, being humiliated and feeling bad about yourself, right? So and that made him weaker in a way, because shame has the exact opposite physiological response from anger. Anger makes you stronger, basically. It helps being strong. It helps being angry when you are supposed to perform physically. Marit Bjørgen, a big skier in Norway, she had this mental visualization that when she wants to track down an opponent in front of her, she visualizes if like she's a hungry lion, and then she's saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to eat you. And that helps because it makes her angry and she feels more energy. And shame acts exactly the opposite way, basically. So when you're ashamed, you run slower, you lift less. So yeah, so it's quite interesting in a way. It affects their body in a big way.
One of the things about this football, because that instead of validating these emotions that are happening on the pitch, it's like, okay, Karius, he pulls the jersey up and there's 10 other players around him saying, now you got to man up.
Yeah.
And that's like a really crazy thing, just compared to what you just said the last 10 minutes. It's we're not going to validate your shit right now. Stop doing that. And then use this term like, now you got to man up. Now you got to own your shit and get your shit together. Come on.
And it depends really on like how big is his emotional capacity. If he's if he has experiences with, I can handle shame, I can get back up there, I can become self-assertive, and I'm not totally invaluable. I actually have value. Then he can actually master that. That can actually help. Like, come on, man up, you got this. But he needs to sort of have that feeling of, but you're still part of us, and we need you. That needs to be communicated in a way. So it's not like, fuck Karius, now you've blown it for all of us. You asshole. Now man up and get. That will probably just make the shame like going to explode.
Which actually happened because he made another mistake in that match.
Exactly.
But another question I have is about these MMA fighters, because most of them are like, if I get angry in the cage, I'm going to lose. So they see anger as a way of actually, okay, I've lost control, because they define what they call as anger then.
I would say that that's probably, when they're talking about an anger that is loss of control, then it's not really a primary self-assertive anger anymore, right? Then it's probably something else like rage in a way. And then you actually lose control. You do that, right? You see that happening all the time with people, like too much of it. And often it's a secondary emotion instead. It is often, rage is very often a secondary emotion. We have the famous shame rage cycle, which is when you're actually feeling dumb, when you're feeling stupid, when you're feeling humiliated, and you respond with rage. And but it sounds like, oh, you're angry, but no, it's a secondary emotion. It's a secondary anger in extreme fashion.
Yeah, so that's what.
And then you storm the Capitol.
Yeah, that would be rage in a way.
Yeah,
because
that's interesting though, because also there it's a little bit of primary adaptive anger in there as well, like in terms of their view. Remember, like you have to view emotions from who is experiencing it. So in terms of politics, oh, this is a dangerous field to get into. I can hear it. Oh no.
Yeah, keep going.
But in terms of politics, well, if you're scared that you're losing your country and you're losing your job and you don't have economical safety, then fear would be an adaptive emotion, right? And also, if people treat you really bad about it and call you a racist or an idiot, or that you don't deserve more, or don't listen to you, that would actually trigger primary anger. It would, because you're not being cared about, you're not being treated well, you're being stepped upon. So that would actually like I need something else and you're not giving me what I need. That's actually also primary anger. But it can also like go into hate, which is often a mixed emotion state of both anger, fear, and disgust or contempt. So which is like a more difficult state in terms. But a lot of the politics, I get that a lot of people get angry because we're not treating each other well and not listening to each other and not empathizing with each other. And that would actually be healthy anger in a way. You need to be respected. Yeah.
And that sounds extremely much like the prison system. So you get in, you have done something bad, and you feel whatever you feel, and then you're just getting invalidated, like, you know, incredibly invalidated because you're stepped on, and you further stepped on, and you're stepped on until you're so small that you crawl out the door when you're finished with your prison sentence.
Yeah.
So it's similar to what is happening in politics when you don't take those emotions seriously and you just say, shut the fuck up, we're going to oppress you even more to the point where you can't feel it anymore. And it's very similar, and it's no coincidence, I think, that these things happen in the US, where you have such an institutionalized way of invalidating people's feeling called the prison system. So I think it's parallel to what is happening, have happened for a century in the US.
Remember that just like, because the feeling of crawling out would be a shame feeling, right?
Yeah.
The most harmful and painful emotions we have, if not, it is probably the most painful feeling we have. And therefore, it's also actually quite a powerful way in order to affect other people. And we use this a lot, and it's not healthy. You know, we use contempt and disgust to try to change others through shame, and that's quite it's common. It happens in society all the time. We try to make our meningsmotstandere, people who mean something different than us. We even sometimes we even say it, shame on you, right? But we tend to call them names. We try to induce shame in order for them to kind of collapse and like join our opinions in a way. But usually trying to change other people with shame, or at least adults with children, it works really well. That's sad. I mean that in a negative way, because they become submissive in a way that's not healthy at all, you know. But with adults, if you try to shame people that have different opinions, they usually either like collapse and or withdraw and like, okay, so it doesn't matter if I vote or not. I can just, it doesn't matter. My opinion is not important. It doesn't matter if I engage or not, and you just lose interest. Or they go into attack mode, which is different. And that's when you become more and more like polarized in a way, because both parts, and I see this on both sides. One side call the other sides of for racists, idiots, misogynists, and saying that they're stupid and that they don't understand. That will trigger both shame and anger, and also sometimes healthy anger even, because you're being stepped upon. And the other side calls the first side snowflakes, naive, stupid, etc., 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 and weak. So we tend to we throw stuff at each other in order to make the other side feel bad, but instead we just get more and more polarized in a way.
You also have
this is what an emotion-focused therapist would look at when he sees politics in a way. Look at the emotional sequences.
But when you look at it from a perspective like that, and you say that, okay, so I'm going to change the other person by making him feel bad. I mean, it's just that seems so completely irrational. When you just put, piece it, take it apart and put the pieces out there, and you say, okay, so I'm gonna change you by making you feel bad to the point where you agree with me. It is completely insane.
And people do it all the time. We do it in business, we do it in work, we probably do it in everyday life, even without knowing it.
I have an example about that, because I just listened to one of your videos, Aksel, where you talk about when a kid is doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And then you yell at him or punish him because he did it, but he's still grieving about, or he feels bad already for doing something wrong, and then we put more punishment and yelling at them and everything.
It probably makes it worse. It's if the kid is already experiencing adaptive shame, even, or adaptive guilt, then that's enough. Help him with the emotion, him or her with the emotion.
Except it's easier to kick somebody when they're down.
Absolutely. And maybe you're tired, maybe you're fed up, or you're sick of it yourself, or you want to really give that kid a lesson, and
this is the 100th time they're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. You want, I want them to remember it. Then you
also as a parent, maybe you're shameful. And that is your reaction to the situation. You become angry on the shame as a secondary. And then you take it out on the kid. And from what I've seen, it's very seldom that the parent punishes the kid for the benefit of the kid, or even thinking it should be the benefit of the kid. It's to benefit themselves, to shut the kid up and have my own space and go to your room and don't bother me, or whatever it is. So it's
absolutely that's quite common, that I meet parents or I meet the clients of parents where it's obvious that the parent is criticizing or condemning the child when the parent is actually feeling unsuccessful themselves as a parent because they're not able to handle the situation. And when I meet the parent in say parent counseling, and they're being quite contemptful towards their child and saying oh, can't you just fix him, stuff like that, or he's obnoxious, he's evil. I've even heard those words. It can be tempting for me again then to react oh, you can't say that about your child, but that won't help either, because then I'm doing exactly the same thing back. So I have to meet, even no matter what a person does or what a person feel, I have to meet them with empathy and recognizing, now you feel, it's really hard, and you've tried a lot in helping your child and still it doesn't work, and that must really suck, right? No wonder you feel this way, and no wonder you want somebody else to fix it, because it feels really bad. That's more empathic, it's and help them actually in order to get into those primary emotions instead of staying in the secondary contempt or anger or whatever.
It's that story in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People where the guy complains to Stephen Covey, I can't understand my teenager, he just won't listen to me anymore. And Covey gets him to repeat this 3 times until he says back to him, but I thought if you wanted to understand somebody, you should listen to them. And it's just oh, and it's just this nice little really nice little story. But just before Katrina shuts us down, she usually does this around this time. I think this is great. I feel I think this is one of those Dunning-Kruger effects where I sort of think I know what I'm talking about, and then I meet this expert and it's fuck, I know fucking nothing about this. This is so cool. So I really a really big special thanks for taking the time.
Nice. I don't feel like an expert either, though. I experience new things all the time that I don't know why it happens. So
Yes, I would really like to invite you for another time, Aksel. This was really cool. I think we should. I feel like we could talk about this all day. So it's
probably.
It's really helpful.
I would be glad.
We have
I'm in the baby bubble for the next couple of months, though. But
yeah. But you know what we should do, Katrine? We should actually ask people to come up with questions to Aksel, because after this, people will have lots of questions like, oh, how should I then handle this situation with my mother or with my spouse or with my kid or whatever? And you could harvest some good questions, and we can sort of throw that at Aksel the next time. That would be cool, because then we get engagement from the viewers.
Cool.
I will do something on empathy then. It sounds like that.
Yeah. How do you empathize in this situation, which is for me completely alien or whatever? So
So we will. We have another webinar on Wednesday, I think, with Frode Lein. He's a crazy athlete. So for people who wants to join us on Wednesday, feel free. That's 9 o'clock.
Yeah. 9 p.m.
Good
Central
luck, Aksel.
European
Good luck in 1 week. I don't know if this was taken at the start, but in 1 week, Aksel becomes a parent for the second time.
Yeah.
So, good luck, man.
Yeah. Thanks.
Good luck, Aksel. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.